Hello and welcome to episode number 113 of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, where we talk all about the hobby that makes us happy, Disney and Lorcana. I am one of your hosts, Dan.
I'm Jim, and we're back.
Jim, how did that feel, buddy?
Ooh, it felt powerful. It felt powerful.
It did, man. Holy cow. So, hey, how's it going, everybody? How is it going? So, you're going to have to give us a little bit of grace, okay? So, yeah, that's right. This is the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, and it is not the end. We're back. We are back, baby. So, why are we back? Well, all right. Well, I don't want to start the episode quite yet. We've got a couple things to touch on first. Like the first being, guys. So I was actually listening to our last podcast episode not that long ago, within the last couple of days. Podcast episode 112. Is this the end? And we Jim and I have been talking about coming back for a couple of weeks. It's probably, honestly, I think it's been more like a month, right, Jim?
Yeah, roughly. That's it.
I think it's been about a month where we've talked about bringing the podcast back, and well, it's back. It is back, but why? Why is the podcast back? Now, before we get into it, we need to talk about a couple of things. Hey, that's right. We're in your ear holes again. And if you are listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform, hey, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. Because guess what? We are coming at you every single week with more new, fresh episodes of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast. That's right. So again, hit that subscribe button. And if you're watching us on YouTube, with the sweet visuals, hey, do you like Disney Lorcana content? Do you like Disney Lorcana podcasts? Well, if you do, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on bell notifications so you can be notified when we release more Disney Lorcana videos and content in the future, because it's coming. Now we're creating more content again. Yay. And honestly, I genuinely did not think we'd get back to here, because I remember what it was like. Listening to episode 112 again reminded me, oh yeah, that's why we stopped doing this. Like, it was crazy. Like, listening to it, we were talking about how doing the podcast took up a lot of time, and I was editing all of that, and then I'd have to edit all of our other videos, and I don't have to do that anymore. And again, if you've watched our other content, I have to give Jim props again for finding us an editor, and our editor has been doing phenomenal. Jonathan is amazing.
All right,
I love it.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really find him. He found me. All right, it's kind of a cool little story, not very long story, but
Let's hear
he
it.
kind of found me.
Let's hear it, Jim. Let's hear it. I don't think you've talked about it at all, like on any piece of content.
No.
So let the audience know, how'd you find Jonathan, our new editor?
Okay, so every now and again, I would go on to some subreddit groups looking for YouTube editors for hire. And this was even before Dan and I even started this channel. And then just would randomly yes. Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
Well, sorry, before we came together to start the channel,
correct,
right? Like, I still had stuff previously.
Right.
So, and I would just go back to it every now and again. I wasn't even a part of the subreddit.
Yeah.
I didn't join it. It would just, be there every now and again for me.
Right.
And I just remember all right, I'm going to start editing the videos. And, I was actually really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I get a notification on my phone of the subreddit for looking to hire editors. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I haven't seen this in forever. I didn't even know I got notifications. I didn't even know I got notifications from Reddit on my phone.
That's crazy.
Right? Uh-huh. Now I get a lot of them. But that was one of the first ones I remember getting.
Uh-huh.
And so I just go look at it, and I see this whatever his intro video was of this is how I edit stuff. And I'm like, okay, sure. Let me talk to him. I sent him a message, and then, the rest was history. So he found me somehow. subreddit notification on phone. I don't know what's going on, Apple. Illuminati? I don't know.
I don't know. Illuminati, I love it. Oh, it's great. But in all seriousness, dude, Jonathan is killing it, and I'm so excited to have him part of our team, and it's awesome. It gives us the opportunity to be doing the podcast again, and also potentially be doing other types of future content. It's free. It frees up a lot of my time. Like, dude, I mean, Jim knows it's so much of my time is freed up. And it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. All right. So with all that kind of stuff out of the way, let's dive into the topic this week. So, just other side note real quick. I forgot how much I love doing these outlines for the podcast. Like, for real. It's fun. So we're back, but why? But why are we back? Well, the first thing I have here is we genuinely miss doing the podcast. Jim, did you genuinely miss doing this?
Honestly, I love doing it every single week.
Yep.
I mean, I know we put a lot of emphasis on it, but I've told Dan multiple times I've never regretted doing the podcast.
Yep.
Like, it was always fun.
Yep.
And but yeah, it's nice to just hang out and talk about whatever it is we're going to talk about.
Yep. And we'll talk.
I'd say I missed it.
And we'll talk about what we're going to be talking about here shortly. But I genuinely realized, like, I really did realize how much I loved doing this. Like, just sitting down at a microphone, talking, shooting the crap with you,
shooting the stuff.
But it was a lot of fun. And I'm really, really excited that we get to be doing this again. And talking about something more specific now, and really niching down, and really, not controlling, but really targeting what we're talking about. And that is what also gets me really excited as well. The first thing, again, we genuinely miss doing this. The second thing is why we're back. We love Disney Lorcana, right? We absolutely love it, particularly multiplayer Lorcana, and we want to talk about it. And the podcast gives us a perfect avenue to talk about all things Lorcana that we want to talk about on a consistent basis, right? Because right now, the only content that we're doing that you see on the channel is, and it's consistent, we do Multiplayer Madness on a consistent basis and have a ton of fun with it. It is a lot of fun. And which it's great. I kind of wanted to be doing more. And now, again, we talked about with having Jonathan, it frees us up to be doing some of that more stuff. And this is going to be that more stuff that we're going to be doing. So talking about how we love Disney Lorcana, right? Particularly multiplayer, we love doing that. And we have a lot to talk about. We've had a lot of experience over the years, with card games in general. And now that we're really hyper focused on Disney Lorcana, having the podcast gives us an outlet to talk about all of the things that we want to talk about and how it relates to Lorcana, and gives us that platform, right? So we have a lot to talk about. And, we've already have many topics that we really want to dive into. And some of these topics have been stuff that comes up in Multiplayer Madness. If you're a previous listener to the podcast, you could have heard Jim and I reference our podcast topics list from the past. I started that up again and have already, I think right now it's not super long because there's a lot of stuff that can be repeated, especially now that we're talking about one specific game. I've already got I think half a page worth of topics. And Jim's looked through it. What's your thoughts on the list so far, Jim?
I was telling Dan the other day, because he asked me, he's like, hey, if you come across any other random ideas, throw it on there. I was like, yeah, I had a couple. And then I was reading through the list. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there it is. All right, yeah, that was a good one too. Oh, I got this great idea. All right, yeah, it's at the bottom of the list. Okay, all right. I don't even know why I'm trying anymore. I don't know what I'm doing.
So, all right. So here's actually another thing. We're talking about topics, right? So recently, I think, at the time of recording the podcast, it was yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday, where again, Magic the Gathering, they announced the Commander Rules Committee announced a banning of Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, and Dockside Extortionist. The Magic community is absolutely livid. Oh yeah, Nadu too. But the Magic community is absolutely livid. Okay. Yes, we're talking about Magic for a little bit, but it's a big thing that came up, right? And so again, I'm thinking about our content, right? And if something big comes up like that in Lorcana, now that we have our podcast is back, it gives us just a perfect opportunity to address something that comes up in the community, and that gets me excited, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. And dude, that's still going on. Actually, before we started recording this, I was listening to a live stream where people were talking about it. It's like, it's crazy. And honestly, I'm adding a topic like that to the list because it's a perfect thing to like really talk about, of like bannings and whatnot.
Who's the famous? Well, who's the football player that would go on game night?
Cassius Marsh.
Okay, thank you.
You saw his video?
That guy. Oh my goodness, dude. Yeah, dude, I saw his video.
He went hard. He was not happy, which I get it. I get it. But hey, we're here to talk about Disney Lorcana, not Magic the Gathering. Yeah. But anyway, that's something that came up and is like.
Although, Dan, yes. We're keeping the spirit alive, because in all of the other, pretty much all of the other podcasts, episodes? It wasn't a Magic the Gathering podcast, but we would always bring it up.
Yeah, right. we can't continue our podcast and not at least touch on Magic, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think, working on next week's episode, I've already got something in the outline about Magic and like how it relates to Lorcana, because again, when you look at Magic, again, a game that's been around for 30 plus years, like the godfather of card games for all intents and purposes, I think you can look at, if you're playing another game, you can look at Magic and see what's worked, look at why Magic has been successful, and there are lessons that you can learn and then apply them to your game, your format, or whatever. And it's something that I think some people miss. Some people don't, but I think some people do miss that. I think if you can look at it with a critical eye and figure out, okay, here's Magic. Why has it been successful over so many years? I want my game to be successful. What can we learn from this? So just something to know. Okay, we have a lot to talk about. Again, if you've listened to our podcast, we have a lot to talk about. Okay, next, in our eyes of why we're back, right? Why the podcast is back. In our eyes, and Jim can pipe in and tell me if he agrees or disagrees on this, but in our eyes, there is a serious lack of and void in the Disney Lorcana content creator space of casual, which when I say casual, I mean not competitively focused Disney Lorcana content. And we want to help fill that gap. Okay. We'll talk about casual social play here in a minute. But there is a serious void. If you go to YouTube, if you search any podcasting platform, I think podcasts not so much, but really more so YouTube content. There's a lot of great Disney Lorcana podcasts out there, and I encourage you to go check them out. We've featured many podcast hosts on Multiplayer Madness already, and we're going to continue to do so. But I do think podcasts and YouTube content there is a divide there a little bit. So because I think if you go to podcasts, there's different types of Disney Lorcana content that are not on YouTube. So that's why I think it's the majority of YouTube content specifically seems to be hyper-focused on all things related to competitive Disney Lorcana. That's not a bad thing. Like, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm just saying that as a statement of something that I've noticed. Jim, do you agree? What's your take on that? You think that's true?
Oh, yeah, I think it's true.
And again, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, there's just so many people out there with this is the meta decks. Yeah. This is how all the meta cards. Let's look at the prices of all the meta cards.
Scrolling Dreamborn, looking at decks.
Yeah, let's just do a bunch of 1v1 content, which I get it because, I've been around Magic for so long, and it was like, depending on how good the standard format was
Mm-hmm.
and the modern format. You know, people didn't really think about anything else. But
Right.
when more and more, I've noticed like the older players, if they were still in it, they didn't really care too much about the rotation. It was once it started to grow.
Wait. Whoa. Hold on. What is rotation?
Oh, wait a year for Lorcana, you'll find
I'm
out.
pretty sure we're going to find out.
So, yeah, just like comparing it to that, it's like once you start getting such a large group of people now coming into the game, and then they find out like some of their cards they just can't play anymore, and just more and more time goes on, and more people then start to fall into that mindset of,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I still like the game, but I don't want to play this format anymore. I want to find something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened to Magic, and
Yeah.
Commander just
Took
explodes in the
Right.
last like 5 years, 4
Yeah.
years, 5 years, something along
Yeah.
those lines.
Yeah.
And I can see it also happening with Lorcana. As of right now, you're able to use every single card you have.
Lorcana is
standard
only
format.
1 year old. Lorcana is a baby. And and honestly, like, it's been a phenomenal year. You won't hear, I don't think you will not hear Jim and I say it's been a bad year and like Lorcana's in a bad place. No, we're definitely not saying that at all.
No.
It's phenomenal. Like the state of the game currently is great. It's really great. We just came off 2 Disney Lorcana challenges this past weekend of Las Vegas and Birmingham. And, you know, it was all over, you know, I was checking up on socials all the time, seeing how things were going. And like they were great tournaments. The turnouts were fantastic. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a 1,900 person tournament for a major card game? I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it definitely has. I just can't tell you what the numbers were or have been for like Flesh and Blood and Magic. I could not tell you.
Yu-Gi-Oh hasn't had one of those numbers in a while.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, if I don't know what the numbers were for Birmingham, but I know Vegas was around 1,900 total competitors, because I think they had a cap of 2048. But I looked at Melee and it showed like 1,900. So, I mean, let's just say Birmingham was half. We're talking like 3,000 people playing Disney Lorcana at 2 major tournaments in 1 weekend. That's, I mean, if that doesn't tell you the state of the game, then I don't know what does, man. And honestly, again, you talk about rotation, right? There isn't the problem right now of, hey, I have cards that I can't play in a standard format. That's not a problem right now. And it's not going to be a problem for a while. But again, the state of Lorcana is great, you know, and everybody plays these competitive formats again with one of the things that's great about Lorcana is it's giving a lot of players who this is their first TCG exposure to competitive formats, competitive tournaments, and giving them that outlet to play in a competitive tournament. I've heard many stories, obviously anecdotal, of players who've been in card games for a long time and sat down, you know, against players, and they're playing against a broom deck or a deck that is not a part of the competitive metagame, right? I think if you rewind the clock 6 months, heck, even a year, if you talk to many of these players in Disney Lorcana and you ask them the question, hey, what is metagame? They wouldn't know. They wouldn't know. Right. And that just goes to show you, like, there's a lot of new trading card game players in Disney Lorcana. And I think that's a great thing. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. And there's probably people who do think that's a bad thing, but I'm not one of them. Well, let me ask you, do you agree? Do you think there are people who think that's bad?
I don't know. I just wanted to throw in, if you are a player that doesn't know what metagame is, go back, check out our other podcast.
Oh, yeah.
We have a video talking all about
correct
meta.
Yes, and actually, before we move on, I do want to address that because I had the thought of, hey, we're starting the podcast again now, so our podcast is now labeled the Hobbies and Happiness Podcast, a Disney Lorcana podcast, because we're talking all about Disney Lorcana. But yes, we're continuing. This is episode 113. This is not episode number 1. I am a big believer of I like keeping, and again, all of our previous content is not like it's unrelated. It's all related. Yeah. I like, and I'm a big believer of keeping all of our content in one place, and that way our audience, our community can see our evolution over the years. I like being able to see our evolution over the years. I mean, I haven't done this yet, but I want to go back and listen to the first couple episodes. Because I remember recording them, and I want to go back and listen to it just to, give me a sneak back of, where we were, what we were talking about.
We were in your mom's basement, Dan.
Yeah, I'm still in my mom's basement. No, I'm not in my mom's basement, people. All right, this is my house. All right. But I do want to talk about that because I like that, and if you're following our content, you're going to see it's all going to be kept. It's all going to be still kept together.
Yeah.
So, okay. But yeah, the majority of Disney Lorcana content is hyper-focused on the competitive scene. And that's not going to go away. And it's not a bad thing. But there's a serious lack of other types of content, and we want to fill that void. It's the content I want to make. It's the content we want to make, and we want to fill that void. So speaking of that, I do want to touch on very briefly content creator advice. Right. I've been given this advice in the past, and it's also advice that I've given to other people, other content creators. See a need, fill a need, and make the content you want to see. So like right now, the content I want to see is not content that's on YouTube, or it's not content that I see a lot of, right? And that is casual, multiplayer focused Disney Lorcana content. And so that's a big reason why we are doing the podcast. And I'm excited about it. Like there's a lot that I love talking, and I love talking about Lorcana, and this gives us that outlet. And then lastly, selfishly, I've also mentioned this before. I know, I've talked about this with Dan, the Lorcana Fanatics. Great channel. Or I should say not channel, but, account on Twitter. You should go check them out. Dan and Lily, fantastic people. Were you there? I don't know. I might have hung out with them at the Disney Lorcana the Challenge in Chicago before you got there. But Dan's daughter Lily is about my daughter's age, and I got to play with Lily at the DLC Chicago. Yeah, I think that might have been before you got there, probably.
Yeah, you were telling me about them.
Yeah. But I've talked about this with him before, but selfishly, and yes, this is definitely a selfish thing that I want. But I want Disney Lorcana community to, when they hear Hobbies and Happiness, I want them to hear multiplayer Lorcana people. Or if the moment somebody says multiplayer, like multiplayer Lorcana or social play, think, oh, that's Hobbies and Happiness. That's Dan and Jim. Like that, I guess that's a selfish desire that I have, but it's the kind of content and it's the kind of stuff that I want to do, and I want to provide that for the community. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to be known for that, right?
Yes,
like,
yeah.
For other games, it's like, oh, when I'm thinking about budget magic, who do I think of? When I think about
Who do you think of when you think budget magic? Who do you think of?
I think of the guy who helped me build my first ever magic deck.
SBMTG? You think Dev?
SBMTG,
yep.
Mono green werewolves.
Yep. Okay. All right. Yep. Yeah. I think if you've been in card games, right, you can think of any game, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think of certain creators, they're known for something. There's probably one thing that they've niched down, like APS, Team APS. They're the Yu-Gi-Oh.
I'm pretty sure they're from Chicago too.
Are they for real?
I'm like 95% sure.
I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah, pretty sure.
But yeah, there's so many, right? But there's a lot of them that are out there that if you hear their name, you immediately think of like not even just a card game, but like a specific like niche or format within that card game. That's going to happen more with Magic because like it's been around for a long time. There's so many different formats. But again, I just want when people hear Hobbies and Happiness to think, oh yeah, they're the multiplayer Lorcana guys, So Anyway, so that leads us to segue into, let's talk about casual and social play. Okay. Because that is multiplayer Lorcana. There's been many debates in the past, right, about casual versus competitive. And we've talked about that specific topic multiple times on our podcast in the past. So you can go check out those conversations. And probably something we're going to be talking about again in the future at some point, because it's a topic that comes up all the time. But talking about casual play, right? So relatively recently, there was the D23 Expo at, I think it was in Disneyland this year. I would love to go that at some point, but unfortunately was not able to go this year. But anyway, relatively recently, conversations regarding casual and competitive play and how it relates to Disney Lorcana were taking place again on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I still call it Twitter. I don't know. Jim, what do you call it? Do you call it Twitter?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna keep calling it Twitter. The way that I view that is like, again, we're from Chicago. It's not
Don't you
the
say
Willis
it.
Tower. It's the Sears Tower.
Don't you say it.
And you know what else? Another one too. Comiskey. It's Comiskey. Yeah. Do not call it. It's not Guaranteed Rate Field, dude. It's Comiskey. All right. It will always and forever be.
Honestly,
Comiskey.
I'm fine if you call it U.S. Cellular.
Oh, I'm fine with that too. You can call it U.S. Cellular.
Please don't call it the worst name ever created for a stadium.
Okay. So anyway, conversations were happening on Twitter around casual versus competitive, and that topic briefly got brought up at D23 at the Disney Lorcana panel. Rochelle was talking about it. I believe on that panel you had Steve, Ryan, Shane. I think Shane was on the panel. Shane Harley, Rochelle, and then there was somebody else. I can't remember. It's actually been a few days since I've watched it. But anyway, Rochelle briefly brought up that topic of casual versus competitive. Well, casual and competitive play, not versus competitive, but talking about the different types of play. And she was talking about the casual side of play, and then a slide came up and it said social play. So the framing around casual play from Ravensburger specifically is calling it social play, which I think is a perfect descriptor. So events were being discussed from the lens of this social play in mind, as opposed to competitive events, which is great. There were a bunch of different things that I believe Rochelle talked about. She did talk about multiplayer, talked about cosplay. This is when they showed these new cards. And they're basically vanilla cards. Well, they are vanillas, but at the bottom, there was just blank space for characters to sign. So like they wanted to do like these events where, hey, you go to like a park, you go to Disneyland, Disney World, and then now they have these signings from the characters. Hey, take your cards and get them signed by the characters. So different types of events all framed around this lens of social play. And that is 100%. And Jim, you tell me if you agree with this, but I think that's 100% where multiplayer formats, multiplayer Disney Lorcana should lie. I think it should lie because, again, yes, you can talk about, like, again, talking about Commander, CEDH, competitive EDH. Yeah, you can talk about competitive multiplayer. But I think multiplayer Lorcana really shines as a form of social. It's a social format. So what's your thoughts there, Jim?
Honestly, I love the name. I don't know how many times I'd go into other multiplayer games for other card games, who knows specifically. And I'm just there to hang out, have a good time, mess around a little bit. You know?
What's the thing that you say all the time when specifically in you've said it in Multiplayer Madness, you've said it so many times. What's it about? It's
You're about me on the spot.
I know.
Dan.
It's about what we make along the way. What is it?
Oh, it's about the friends we make along the way.
Like, that's literally it, though. Like, for real. And I think that equates to social play, right? It's you're making tons of friends. A quick story time. Jim and I met at a local game store, Grapple Games. Again, we've talked about this multiple times on the podcast before. That's where we met. That's where I met a ton of friends, right? And then, hey, we all enjoyed playing Commander. This is well before Lorcana, right? You know, we enjoyed playing Commander. I got everybody's numbers and then said, hey, why don't you guys all come to my house? And like I've had Jim, I've had other friends of ours over for Commander nights. And then
Which
we've
talked about them.
We've talked about that before. We've played Dice Throne. We've played a bunch of other games. And again, it was, hey, these are friends that I made along the way, you know, through the vehicle of Commander at the time. Disney Lorcana, multiplayer Disney Lorcana can be that vehicle, right? You're going to be able to do that better in my eyes from a multiplayer format versus a 1v1 format, right? When I go to AF, our local game store, Amazing Fantasy Games, shout out Amazing Fantasy in Frankfurt. If you're ever in southwest suburbs of Chicago, Frankfurt, head on out to Amazing Fantasy Games in Frankfurt Friday nights, 7 o'clock, I think. Yeah, 7:30 p.m. Central Time is when our weekly league is. But anyway, go there Fridays. And I've made friends there, right? But it's a different vibe and a different feeling playing 1v1 than it is sitting down and playing a multiplayer game, right? And I think, again, I love the descriptor of social formats because I think it's perfect. It's perfect. It absolutely is, and it's one of the reasons why we love multiplayer Lorcana. I want to give one reason why I love multiplayer Lorcana, and then I want Jim to think about one reason that he loves multiplayer Lorcana.
All right, Dan, don't steal mine. Don't steal it.
Okay, well no, then you go. Then you go first. I'm gonna let you go. If you've got it, then go.
Oh yeah, I mean I was ready.
Go ahead.
You know, and Dan kind of brought it up, sent the spoilers. It's the friends we make along the way.
Oh yeah.
But more importantly, I already like making Dan mad in these games, but now you throw in 2 more people, and now I can make 3 people mad in the whole game. That's like 3 times the amount of fun. That's so much fun.
To Jim, Lorcana is a zero sum. When it comes to fun, it's a zero sum game, and he's gonna have all of it.
I'm gonna have all of it. Nah, but honestly,
shout out to Brendan Patrick for that one.
But honestly, yeah, meeting all the people we've met so far, and you know, whether it's been with the multiplayer madness or just multiplayer games we've had even outside of recording, it's just the people that you meet in these games. It will always be my favorite part of any of these games.
Yeah, and that's a huge reason for me. It 100% is, and I don't ever want to downplay it because it's literally part of the reason we started creating content and came together to form Hobbies and Happiness, right? You know, if you've been following us for any amount of time, you know one of the big reason we came together was we wanted to open, we still want to, our own LGS in our area. And the reason why was because where we met, Grapple closed. And we had an amazing group there, amazing community that now did not have a good place to play games. And we wanted to create that space. This, like Disney Lorcana, and really Multiplayer Madness as well, gives us that opportunity to create community. The Disney Lorcana community already has been a phenomenal community now. Excuse me. Over the first year of the game, right? And it's just going to get better. But one of the things that I love about the multiplayer formats, the multiplayer side of this game, is it's giving us that avenue to really cultivate that community on a different level than you can cultivate in 1v1 formats, right? The more people you get to play with in one sitting, the more, like, the better you're. Okay, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this because I don't want to say, and I don't believe that you can't create community in competitive formats, and because that's 100% not true. Just look at where the game is now. It's really all been built on the back of competitive focused players, competitive focused channels and whatnot. So that's 100% not the case. But I do think there's a big difference between competitive focused communities and socially focused communities. I think socially focused communities, there's just a different vibe there. I'll say that. I think there's just a different vibe because I think that's true. I'll give an actual perfect example. When we were at Chicago, okay, I had tickets, and I wasn't really going to use the tickets. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. I wasn't trying to get like a certain card or anything like that. But I had tickets, and somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for tickets." I'm like, "I got some." And they're like, "All right, well, what do you want from or whatever?" I'm like, "I don't know. I was thinking about just going to get some packs or whatnot, just because." And then the guy says to me, and I'm not throwing shade, I'm just laughing, right? But he says, "What? That's terrible value," which is true. Which is true. But I laughed. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm not here for value. Like, I'm not at this challenge for value. I respect the mentality, though.
Yep.
100%. I respect it. But that's not why I was there. I was there. And when we were there, when Jim and I were there, we didn't play in any events. I played in 0 events. What did we do? Mm-hmm. I had a ton of multiplayer decks, just jamming multiplayer games with friends. That's why we were there. Like, we had friends there. And we wanted to play multiplayer with people. And that's what we did. And had a great time. I think that actually sums up. I think that's a perfect example of, right, the differences between like the mentalities of competitively focused communities and then socially focused communities.
Now real quick, Dan, let me know if you noticed this as well while we were at the
challenge.
The challenge. I was about to call it Pro Tour.
Same thing.
So while we were at the challenge, right? You know, when we had everyone around our table and we were playing multiplayer games or whoever else was watching, like the atmosphere, the aura, the vibes that were going around our table, everyone was just having such a great time, right? Regardless if you were playing, everyone was just talking. And then it was like, you look over a couple tables down and like, no one's talking. They're just playing their game. And it was like, it was like, man, even the people who weren't even in the middle of like the tournament play, it was like they're doing 1v1 and they just don't seem like they're having a great time in comparison. Right, like we're having a blast,
right, and that's perfect, and I like how you threw in there in comparison, right? Because I mean, obviously, it's gonna be kind of quiet because if you're standing at a table where they're playing a game in a tournament, you can't say anything. Like, I want to be like, oh, don't do that. You've got this, you can't say anything, right?
Or even if you're not talking about the game, talking about a random event that happened or telling a story and taking people's focus off of the game. It's like not good manners during a tournament setting.
Correct. It's just a different vibe. And like time and place, obviously, like there is times and places for that kind of thing. But that's not what I want to be doing a lot of my time with for Lorcana. And I say that like right now, we are on the brink. We're on the eve of set championship season, and I'm probably registering for a few because I want to get different playmats. So like I'm going to be doing some competitive events. I don't honestly know if I'll ever compete in a Disney Lorcana challenge. I don't know if I ever want to. But
I don't have the mental endurance for it.
I know, like that's huge.
It's
dude.
a lot.
The mental fatigue, the decision fatigue. There's so much going on there. But that's a whole other thing to talk about. But like I so enjoy these social formats and the social play of just, dude, we're telling stories, we're having a blast, and unless you're Joe Googly Glimmers, he got so mad that he didn't win that, dude. I felt for him though. He was so close with the John Silver.
Wasn't even close, dude.
But yeah, like, so okay, so continuing here. My next thing was just look at multiplayer madness, right? It's a perfect thing to look at that you can physically see with your own eyes and see how much fun we have on that show. Like, yeah, we're playing a game, and there's been plenty of people who come on from them and they have the mentality of a competitive player. They're like, I'm going to come on and this is going to be sick with all these people. I'm going to do this, and that. And I try to tell guests, because again, it's a different vibe. It's a different environment. And if you're so used to competitive play, like it's something you're not used to. And it's like your mentality has to be so different. Would you agree there, Jim?
100%, man. It's like everyone, or like, so when we have someone with that mindset who comes on, and it's not like I mind it, right? It's
No,
because
of course not.
I'm just going to know how to play into that.
Yes, correct.
And I'm going to bust you out of that mindset. Like,
correct.
In all of our,
and that's
all
fun
of the
for
games,
Jim. That's fun for Jim. And it's so fun. It is.
Yeah. In all of the games where we've had the people, I always, or Dan also, like, we get them out of that mindset.
Oh, yeah.
We
Real
get them
quick.
out of that shell
Real quick.
and kind of throw them into
Oh,
the vast ocean.
We
that
throw them into the
is
fire.
Multiplayer chaos.
Yeah.
You know?
What's the phrase? From the frying pan into the flames, or something like that. From the frying pan into the flames, or something. But that's literally what you're saying. 100%.
Through the fire and the flames we carry on.
Yes, 100%.
That's mine. Through the fire and the flames, I carry on.
Right there. What Guitar Hero was that from? It was on one of them.
3.
Was it 3? Oh yeah, it was 3.
3.
That was like the best one ever. I never attempted that song. I never attempted that on
I've beaten it.
On like the hardest difficulty.
Expert, yeah.
No way. Are you for real?
Yeah. I actually used to have a video of me passing that song. Yeah,
that's insane.
I wasn't like amazing.
Yeah,
I was good enough to pass the song.
Correct. So, okay. So the last thing before we move on to what you can expect here. So for a Disney game in particular, right? I believe, and I'm interested if Jim believes this as well, but I believe that social, casual formats is where Disney Lorcana is going to see the majority of the player base in the future. Okay. What we're really talking about, I think, is families playing at their kitchen tables, not at competitive events. Now, I say that, and I'm going to caveat here real quick. You have already seen a lot of families that have, I think, come out of their shell and have come to these competitive events like with family members. And that is a great thing, especially new TCG players, right? And Disney Lorcana is that vehicle to where they've been able to do that. So all of these formats, right? All these different formats are amazing and important and different in their own ways. And so when we talk about multiplayer formats, they are no different. It is different, but like it's the same thing. Like they're all unique and important in their own ways. Doesn't matter if it's a fan created format, an official format, whatever. They're all different, unique, and important in their each and individual ways. So Jim, what's your thoughts on that specifically? Of where you think the majority of the player base will be for Lorcana in the next 2 years? What do you think?
If it's anything like how Magic was, 15% of the population that played Magic has gone to a local tournament or higher.
Yeah.
That means 85% of the people were not going to tournaments.
Right.
So they're playing at kitchen tables, or they're collecting the cards, or, if you're old school like me, playing out on concrete, just throwing your cards down there with no sleeves.
With no sleeves. Gasp.
Yeah, I think eventually it will be the same. If it's because as of right now, I think it's just too early. How are we even going to get those numbers?
Right.
So,
right. And again,
I think it's the same.
We're not saying any of this from the standpoint of we think where Lorcana is right now is bad. We think, it's definitely not the case.
I love where it's at.
No, 100%. And I love the fact that I'm seeing, I go to Facebook, I go to Twitter. I see all these people who are like, this is my first TCG. I've never been to an event. I'm going to an event. What are some decks? Yada, yada, yada. And again, that's where a lot of the content is. And that's where a lot of people's eyes are, right? Yeah. There's going to come a point, again, you already brought up a rotation, right? Where people are going to be like, wait, I have all these cards now, I can't play them. Like, I think that's going to be a thing. And again, for people who are new to TCGs, you say rotation, it's like, what's that? Right. And that's where you have alternate formats, right? That help fill that role, help fill that gap. Because again, multiplayer formats specifically, I mean, I'm playing with all my cards. You know, like that's what's going to happen. And so you don't have that problem like Jim talked about earlier. You don't have the problem where you've got people coming in and like, I have these cards. You tell me I can't play them in like the competitive circuit, for example, right? That's not a problem. I don't think Lorcana is going to be a what's the word? What's Yu-Gi-Oh? It's a
the legacy.
Not legacy. It's not legacy, but legacy is a what format? Eternal. There we go. Eternal.
Oh, yeah,
that's the word I was looking for. I don't think Lorcana is going to be an eternal format, and they're not going to say anything about that for probably another year. The thing I'll be interested to see is
well, we're going into what, set 5?
We're going into set 6. We're going
into set 6. I think we're going to know in the next.
Well, the question. So we're getting off topic here real quick, but I don't know because again, looking at Magic has now moved to standard being a 3-year format.
Yeah, sure.
So the question is going to be how long that window is going to be.
Right.
So I'm interested to see what that's going to look like in the future, to be honest with you. But again, if you're listening and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, what is rotation? We'll probably talk about that at some point in the future. But
we'll have another video in the next 6 months.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I want to leave this point with again I really want to stress, right? Yeah, we love multiplayer formats, and that's where. Honestly, it's where my heart is. This is what I want to be doing, and this is how I want to contribute to the Disney Lorcana community, is making amazing multiplayer content, and then really facilitating that format. We're going to talk about this even in greater depth next week in next week's episode. But I want to know, yes, while we're going to be focusing primarily on multiplayer formats, I realize and recognize the need for and the importance of single player formats and all these other different kinds of formats, right? Okay. So moving into the last thing we're going to talk about, and there's plenty of things we want to talk about here, but what can you expect from the podcast moving forward? First thing, all Disney Lorcana all the time. That's right. This is now the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, a Disney Lorcana podcast.
Damn, how about a little variety, huh? How about a little variety?
Hey,
all Disney is variety.
Speaking of variety, do you know? I don't know if we've talked about him before, but do you know Mega Mogwai?
I've heard the name.
Okay, so he's a card game content creator, right? He's done Magic content in the past. He's done Legends of Runeterra, and then quit doing Runeterra when they stopped doing competitive formats, and then just basically turned Runeterra into a single player game. And then did also Snap content. He's done a lot of he's done a lot of different games, but he moved from game to game. He recently said he's basically doing variety card games now. So he streams all different card games all the time, which is cool. And he's really big. He's got I think he's got over 200,000 subs on YouTube or something. He's really good. I love his content. But he actually recently did a video with CGB asking CGB asking a Magic player to rate Marvel Snap cards.
I kind of want to do that.
I know we need to do that 100%. We need to do that with some people and doing it about Lorcana 100%. Yeah. It's definitely something I want to do. So maybe, who knows, maybe that you can look for that video in the future. But yeah. Okay. So yes, all Disney Lorcana all the time. That is our content now. We are a Disney Lorcana podcast. We're a Disney Lorcana channel. Specifically talking about the podcast, we may introduce a short segment, maybe at the end of the podcast, where we talk about something that's not related to Disney Lorcana, which isn't a bad idea. I mean, there's plenty of podcasts that do stuff like that. But this podcast will mainly focus around multiplayer formats for Disney Lorcana. So yes, this is a Disney Lorcana podcast. We're going to be talking about Disney Lorcana, but it's going to be through the lens of multiplayer formats. And so So yeah, it's going to be primarily focused on multiplayer. Now, not everybody plays multiplayer, but tune in next week because next week's episode is basically going to be like why you should play it and why you should care about it. I've got a lot of thoughts, and Jim probably has a lot of thoughts too. So when I say that, Jim, what's your immediate reaction of why you should play Disney multiplayer and why you should care about it for Lorcana?
My initial thought was, "You're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do." That was my
fair.
initial thought.
That's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, I mean, when you have multiple ways to play a card game that you love, I think you should check out other avenues on how you could be playing the card game.
Yeah. So specifically talking about multiplayer formats, right? We really want to see multiplayer formats for Disney Lorcana grow and evolve. And we're going to be talking about it all here. I really, truly want to see these types of formats grow and evolve, and I'm excited to see them grow and evolve over time. They've already evolved in the past few months. There's some things going on, and we'll talk about it here in a second. But I really want to see them continue to grow and evolve. And to be honest with you, I want to be at the center of the conversation and help them grow and evolve, right? I genuinely do, because like we talked about already, like it's a completely different experience and it's so much fun. The stories you can tell specifically with Disney Lorcana cards in these games is something you cannot do, in my eyes. You cannot do this in other formats and in other games. Okay, specifically in other games. I saw a tweet from somebody. I know who it was. I'm not going to call him out on it. But I think this explains what I want to talk about here. Don't magicify my princess game. You have cards with Disney princesses on them. You know what kind of stories you can tell with this? Everything is storytelling. Content creation is storytelling. Playing games is storytelling. And if you do not believe me, if you think I'm wrong, I don't think you've never played D&D. And like you've never tried injecting a narrative into something. Because again, I think that genuinely highlights part of the difference between social casual play. I'm just going to call it social play because it's literally what it is. And that's like why I think so invested in and passionate about it. But the difference is between social play and competitive play. In competitive, you're not concerned about telling a story. I mean, you are. You're trying to tell your story of how you beat all your opponents. But what's your thoughts on that, Jim? What do you think about that? Specifically like the storytelling part.
You know, one thing I've learned throughout life now, life is about stories, honestly. Yeah. Like being able to tell stories, experience things in life to then, just be able to tell people stuff and reflect on it and learn from it and grow. And it's like, that could also be a part of these games. Right. It's a part of so many different aspects of life. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Stories are just very important.
And the other thing too, I was just thinking, like, it's not that this doesn't happen in competitive formats or 1v1 formats, because I think it does. It's just on a different level. Most of the time, the stories that you're telling in competitive environments and competitive formats is like, here's a line that happened and like what it meant in the overall course of the tournament. Good example, DLC Vegas. I haven't seen the finals yet, but I heard game 1 of the finals was like amazing. And people were talking about it. I know they talked about it on the Lumineers live stream yesterday or whenever they did that. And like, there's a good example of here's a story we're telling from a competitive environment. One of the stories I love telling about social play, right, is we're playing Commander, and I was playing my mono green Gargos deck. Jim was playing red yellow. I got the Niv Mizzet. There we go.
This man just said red yellow.
I know I did. Because I say is it, and people are gonna be like, what's is it? But yeah, it's is it
red blue.
Oh, I did say red yellow. Oh my word!
You said yellow, dude.
I did say yellow, but yeah, it's red blue. Oh wow, goodness gracious. Yeah, is it red blue? My bad. I messed that up. That's on me. My fault. Anyway, Niv Mizzet. And like there was a sick interaction of I'm trying to take out Niv Mizzet, and like we were like having a stack battle of like not even counters. I'm just trying to get to be able to target Niv Mizzet, and I succeeded. I was able to do it, and then at the last minute, Jim copied my spell, making Niv Mizzet indestructible. I'm like, no. Oh, I love that story, 100%. But like that's a great example of like stories that come up through the course of social play, and you can get like the breadth of the different kinds of stories you can get from playing multiplayer games. It's just different. Like we've talked about earlier, like the vibe is different. The stories you can be able to tell are going to be very different from the ones that you can tell in a competitive environment. So
I was thinking about it though, and there are stories for competitive play.
100%.
It's just usually not so much of like in a game aspect. It's more of like, this is his story throughout competitive play. And it's like, he was able to, go 8-0 in this. And then, he was the underdog in this tournament and he was able to pull it out and he ended up winning the prize, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So there's definitely stories involved with it, but it's
and the stories I think are what audiences relate to. Like even communities of card game players, like that's what they're going to relate to. And they're going to connect with stories like that. They're going to connect with those types of stories, I think, better than stories like, here's the line that won him the game. It's like, yeah, people want to know that because like they want to know how they can learn from it. But I think they're going to identify with and connect better with the personal stories of players.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to be able to tell better stories in social formats like multiplayer. So,
Dan, tell me a better story than, oh my God, it's lightning.
It's lightning. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, that's why I say like they're definitely there and they can happen and they do happen.
Yeah. Oh, and it's
100%.
Beautiful. It's glorious when you get
100%, 100%. So yeah, it's storytelling, right? So again, we're talking about wanting to see multiplayer formats grow and evolve. One of the ways formats could potentially grow and evolve in the future is Singleton, a Singleton format in the future. We'll talk next week. I do have part of the outline is the elephant in the room, okay, of multiplayer formats, and the elephant in the room is Commander. Like that is the elephant in the room when you talk about multiplayer formats for card games, right? So Singleton formats in the future. I think it's too early. When we say Singleton formats now, I need to give credence to, and we'll talk about it probably in a separate episode. But this heroic format, recently learned about this a month or so ago. But my personal take when it comes to Singleton formats is I think it's too early for a Singleton format for Disney Lorcana. I know there are plenty of people who agree with me. There's obviously people who don't agree with me. But again, that's something that we want to talk about, I think, in a different episode. But again, Singleton format is a way that multiplayer formats for the game can evolve over time. And personally, and I'm going to talk about this next week too, but I think the conversation around Singleton formats specifically and how it relates to Lorcana has been toxic thus far, and I do not like it at all. But yeah, I'll say that. Jim, what do you think thus far, man? What do you think?
Well, about like Singleton setup?
Well, the thing that I think Jim and I disagree with is I think it's too early. Jim doesn't think it's too early.
Okay, I think we are at an okay spot.
Oh, you said that. Yeah, you said that.
I don't think Dan is wrong when he says that like it can get stale fairly quickly. I also see it as if it's multiplayer Singleton, you're not going to always see the exact same cards. There will be some variance from game to game.
Right.
And you have the 6 different colors. And if you're only using 2, I think we're at an okay spot to be playing Singleton. Right. Yeah, we're not going to have an absurd number of combinations we could be doing, but that's where I'm at. I
Yeah,
think it's fine.
I do want to have an episode in the future where we really dive deep about this format specifically, because there are people advocating for this format already, which is good. Like I don't want to downplay that. That's a definitely good thing, and that's something that I want to do as well. Is I want to be the advocate for multiplayer formats. So, was thinking about maybe in the future getting some of those guys on the podcast and really having a discussion about why they thought it necessary to come out right now, what their thoughts are for the format in the future, and then give them my opinions, and Jim, you give them your opinions and whatnot. Because again, I think that's how these formats for these card games grow and evolve over time. And and I want to be at the forefront really of having these discussions and advocating for these formats 100%. Yeah. So, all right, next thing, each week we're going to be talking about a topic or cards and how they relate to multiplayer and social formats for Disney Lorcana. I've already touched on this already, but next week's format, why you should play Disney Lorcana multiplayer and why you should care about the format. And my next thing here, I've said this, but I really want to drive this home. We want to advocate for these types of formats because that's how the formats grow, and I think that's how the games grow over time as well. There's been talk about, and I don't think I have this anywhere on this outline, but official formats and fan formats, and it's I don't know if that's enough to be its own separate topic, but it might be. But yeah, in my eyes, is there a difference between an official format and a fan format? Yes. Is there a difference really though between fan format and official format? No, I don't think so. So it's just a different way to play the game. And again, we've seen this, Jim and I have seen this too in the Lorcana community. We mentioned it before, right? We're seeing a lot of new TCG players to the space play Disney Lorcana, which is a great thing. I will never not say it's a great thing. But there's been conversations that we've had being in this space for a very long time that new players are just now thinking about. And I think the whole fan format, official format thing is probably one of those. I don't think it's a nuanced topic. I think there are some people who think it's a nuanced topic. I do not think it's nuanced. I think it's pretty... I don't want to say obvious, because I think if you say something's obvious, if someone disagrees with you, then like the connotation is you think they're not smart, which isn't true. So I don't want to say I think it's like, obvious.
How did you not think of that? Well,
yeah. Like, again, it's one of those things like you don't know what you don't know. And new TCG players, they don't know a lot of things about TCG. So like you can't expect them to know things that like if you've been around TCGs for a long time, that you can't expect them to know a lot about TCGs, right?
Yeah. There's so much history for it, so many things that you've experienced that other people have.
Which people are now just experiencing for the first time for themselves, right? Yeah. So yeah, like kind of like the whole 2-game format, 3-game format thing, like people talking about it, like we've had these conversations for a long time already. Like we genuinely have. Games have gone through that. And ultimately, for the most part, normally they do finally come back to 3-game format or best of 3 is typically better. I'm just going to throw scare quotes up there. But yeah, people are just now having these conversations. Like,
you know what I want to be in a tournament for? I want to have 3-man teams, best of ones.
3.
Yeah, so it's like if you lose your game, you better pray your other 2 people win.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Okay, so I've got some teases on a couple of more topics. There's 2 here. Number 1, to be king or to be kingmaker.
Ooh,
that
king
is
undisputed.
That's dude. Yeah, nice. I like that, Jim.
You like
very
that
good.
one?
That was very good. But to be king or kingmaker comes up literally in like every multiplayer game. Disney Lorcana. The thing about this game, dude, talking about Disney Lorcana through the lens of multiplayer is so different because this is the first game, dude. This is like the first game that I think I've played where It's a race. It's a race to get to the finish line first. Everything else is you just need to kill everybody else. Like it's last man standing. It's last man standing versus you need to go to the finish line first. And that creates a completely different paradigm around multiplayer. It's so weird. And the reason I say weird, it's so different from anything else I've experienced in card games. I mean, what's your thoughts so far on just like how it feels playing multiplayer where it's not a free for all. I mean, it's free for all, but it's not a last man standing, but it's first to finish. What has been your experience thus far? And how have you kind of navigated that briefly here? I'm just curious what your thought is thus far about how it feels to play it, Jim.
Coming from Magic, where it's like, you're able to utilize other people to take out, essentially the arch enemy, right?
Yes, correct.
And it's like, well, now they're out of the game. You don't got to worry about it.
Yes.
But in here, it's like, if they're still in the lead and everyone's teaming up against them, they're still not gone.
Right.
They are not out of this game.
Correct.
It doesn't matter how many times you blow up their board, get rid of everything. It's like, I'm still in. I'm top decking, and it's like, hopefully you have an answer for it. So it's drastically different from that point of view, when it's like, we're all trying to team up against this person, but they just aren't going anywhere. It's literally impossible to take them out of the game. The only way to take them out is for someone else to win. And it's just drastically different.
And one of the reasons too, I think it's also drastically different. Like the card pool is so small. Again, in relation to other card games, right? It's so tiny, right? I'm excited for even just another year of how much that's going to expand the card pool. But speaking of cards, right? One of the things that we've seen plenty of thus far is each opponent, like cards that say each opponent. I want to see, here's an example of a card type I want to see. We've seen plenty of lore drain effects, right? Which I want to point out, we called that before the game. Even we did a video of things that we thought were going to be in the game, and we called lore drain. Okay, we called that. What I want to see, targeted lore drain. I want to see those on cards of chosen opponent loses lore equal to whatever, right? When you do something, chosen opponent loses lore, as opposed to each opponent.
Yeah.
I want to see that. Yes.
I want to see pay lore to get an effect.
Pay lore. There you go.
Pay lore to get an effect.
Okay. Yeah. Here's so you say that. This is a tangent real quick, but the DC deck building game. Okay, they have a new Kickstarter, and the new Kickstarter is Arkham Asylum is the big box, and they've got some other small boxes as well coming out. But one of the things in this new set, okay, is you can bribe a card, okay, and bribing is paying victory points. You pay victory points to play a card from the main deck, and once you play the card, it goes on the bottom of the main deck. So they are introducing paying. Because if you've played DC deck building game, particularly the Villains one, the Villains one I think was the first box that introduced victory point tokens that you can accumulate during the course of a game. Because typically in DC, you get victory points on your cards and you total up at the end of the game. But with that box, there were victory point tokens, and so you could gain them and lose them throughout the course of the game. But now with Arkham Asylum, you can use them. You can pay victory point tokens. You have to have the tokens to be able to pay for it. And like that's your win con is whoever has the most victory points wins at the end of the game. But that's perfect. Yes. Pay lore. Ooh, I don't think that, yeah. I think we'll see it. I don't know when.
I want to see pay lore. Each opponent loses a lore.
Yeah. Pay 2 lore, each opponent loses 1 lore.
No, not even 2, just 1.
Just 1? 1. That would be weird.
Worth it.
I don't know. It's interesting. That's interesting. And like you could even cap it of like you only activate once per turn or something like that. You know, Yeah. But yeah,
evasive and ward.
I want more ways to be able to control my opponent's lore total.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that you have to be, you got to be cautious on, but like you need to do it like tempered. Like it's got to be like that. You can't go out of control with that, or else you're going to be, these games are never going to end, which you can't have. Okay, so that's one topic. Another tease on a topic is how to build an effective multiplayer deck. I think, again, having all these guests on Multiplayer Madness, you know, I look at the deck list and I'm like, all right, it's not bad, not bad. But one thing you hear a lot of, somebody drops an item. Man, I really wish somebody has item removal because I sure don't. It's like, you should.
You should. Why didn't you?
You should have some, but you chose not to. You need to have some cards in your deck about items. Card draw is so important in multiplayer games in particular. So you need to have good engines. A lot there. So there's clearly a lot there, and I think that's really some good insight that we can provide. So that's another tease on a topic. Jim, do you want to tease one more topic? Do you have any thoughts on a topic that you want to talk about?
Oh man, I wasn't even thinking about anything else.
Is there anything that comes out to the top of your head that you'd want to talk about? I know I'm springing some of these on Jim, guys.
Yeah, I was just thinking about other random stuff, or with what Dan was talking about. I don't know. I don't know, man. I wasn't ready for this question. This is too big and important of a question.
Kind of is. Okay, so talking about on the same in the same vein of topics, set reviews. So the podcast gives us the perfect outlet to do set reviews. We've done them in the past. We stopped doing them because it was a lot of work and they were just separate videos.
So much, man.
It was so much work, and it was like separate videos to, you know, in addition to the podcast and then other content we were doing. And so now just integrating them into the podcast is perfect. Like, so this is the perfect outlet and the perfect opportunity to be doing set reviews. We've had people comment and be like, hey, where are the set reviews? Like, oh man, I'm sorry. We're not doing them for, so like for Shimmering Skies, we wanted to do it, but we didn't end up doing it. So
one of them, we even did 4 out of the 6 colors. I think
we did for one of them and just like never ended up posting it. So, so I actually have written here, I've had some folks ask us about doing them, but they're definitely back. I had good reasons for not being able to do them for this set. So thank you, Zoe, my new daughter. So
I was wondering how you spelled it too. So thanks.
Oh, yep. That's it. Zoe, the correct way, if you ask me.
The correct way. That says Zoe, dude. Zoe. You know, like Joe.
Yeah, not wrong. Okay. Next thing that you can expect. I've thought about this. Okay. Before we talk about, actually, Jim, think about other things that you can think of that you'd want to talk about on the podcast. So we've got a couple more points. So you just be thinking of like one thing in the back of your head. I'm giving him notice. This next thing, which I'm curious on Jim's thoughts on this, and then also the community's thoughts, but like deck techs featuring where we talk about decks that we've built and played on Multiplayer Madness. Like if you're listening to this, do you think that's a good idea? Is that something you want to see? Because I would enjoy doing that. Like, because when I build these decks in particular, like I love deck building. I love deck building specifically when it comes to, hey, I'm building for a 4-person pod. Like I'm building for multiplayer. I'm not building to be a competitively viable deck. Like this is not these are 60 card decks, but we are building it from the standpoint of, hey, there's going to be 3 opponents. And like, this is for social play. This is not 1v1. I love doing that because normally what I like to do, theme decks are a whole lot more viable. And you can build around different strategies that aren't normally featured in 1v1 competitive play. So and we're going to talk about deck building because I think that's huge. And again, like you talk about deck building, you can't not talk about Commander. There's a lot there. There's a lot there when we talk about deck building, right? So deck text featuring decks that we've played on Multiplayer Madness. If you're listening, if you're watching, leave us a comment. Leave us a comment. Let us know if you think that's a good idea, if that's something you want to see. Jim, what do you think about doing that? Like deck text for decks that we've played on Multiplayer Madness?
Yeah, I don't think it's bad of an idea.
Would you want to do that for one of your decks?
Oh, yeah, I could talk about the brooms.
Yeah, you could talk about the brooms that are not brooms.
It was a broom list.
Okay. I was thinking about this. It was a deck with brooms in it. It was not a broom deck. It was a deck with brooms in it.
That instantly makes it brooms. All right. If you have multiple brooms, it's a brooms with an S. All right.
Okay. Anyway. Okay. Other segments. So as we wrap up, some other segments that I've thought about doing. Okay, questions from the listeners. We've never really done that before. Like, we haven't really looked for that. And now that we're niching to a specific game, like, it really gives us the opportunity to really, cultivate a community that is focused around one game. Like, we're all thinking about this one thing as opposed to card games, right? So question from the listeners. But also, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? Like, you, the listener, what is something that you have a question about? Or a topic idea and how it relates to Disney Lorcana, particularly a multiplayer format of Disney Lorcana. So you let us know, because I'm curious. So Jim Jim's got a thought here. What do you think, Jim? What are you thinking here?
All right. Thought about another random little topic.
Yes.
Rule 0. When it comes to multiplayer games,
yep.
Whether you have a group or you're looking to find a group, it's kind of important to know, what it is everyone's kind of looking for, right. And the power level of stuff as right. Well. Going over manners, good manners, but then also bad manners if you kind of want to be that guy.
Yes,
it happens.
Which is Jim. But hey, on that topic, okay. Here's another tease. Okay, here's another tease. I threw this into the list probably yesterday, actually. Discard. I have a hot take. Do not play a discard centric deck in a multiplayer format. That's my hot take. That because I'll tell you why. Okay, and 100%, I will have an entire outline for this and we will talk about it. Okay. And Jim, I know, will probably give counterpoints and counter arguments, which is great. Like, that's why we have discussions, right? But here's my main reasoning. Okay. It goes against the spirit of the format. It 100% goes against the spirit of what we're trying to do. Okay. So there's my hot take.
This man just said it goes against the spirit of winning.
But no, I didn't say that. That's not what I said.
I know.
Because
the spirit of the game is winning, Dan.
Not in social play.
Oh yeah, true. You're right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you want to play that in a competitive setting, you go right ahead. Like, it is a legitimate strategy. I'm never gonna say it's not. And it's funny because, like, I've loved playing black discard decks in Magic in the past in 1v1. Yeah.
8 rack.
Yeah, I've been known to be degenerate in the past. But the reason I honestly bring this up is because, for whatever reason, the designers of the game of Disney Lorcana thought it would be a phenomenal idea to really have Emerald one of the primary focuses of the color, and the color identity is discarding, like the discarding effects. And so there are a ton of cards that care about discarding and want you to be discarding, and then you benefit off of when your opponents discard. And so it feels bad to play against that in a multiplayer setting. So like there's, and you can do it. You can do it successfully. You can, I think. And I would have some tips on how you can do it successfully. So that's another tease. So like I said, dude, there's like a ton. I have a ton of topic ideas. So, okay. All right. So that's it. That's a lot of what you can expect from the Hobbies and Happiest podcast, a Disney Lorcana podcast moving forward. We already talked about what's kind of going to go on next week of the topic that we're going to talk about. All right. So I almost said to the listeners,
to the viewers.
I literally almost said to the listeners, hey, if you know what that's from, you're the real MVP right now. If you're listening and you know what that's from, good job. Okay. There's one thing that I want to talk about before we get out of here. So we've got something that happened in our lives. This that's not in the world of Disney Lorcana. What's today?
But it was magical.
It was actually, it's kind of in the world of Lorcana.
It is.
It kind of is. So Jim and I had the immense pleasure of going to Hans Zimmer live. If you do not know who Hans Zimmer is, my question would be why. Actually, Jim, did you know who he was before?
I knew of him. I knew the name.
Okay. All right.
You know, I couldn't tell you all the music that he's made.
Right. That he's
but
done.
It's like, you know, when you hear it, you're like, oh, I know this song.
Yes. So Hans Zimmer, I am probably one of the biggest Hans Zimmer fans out there. I have loved his music for many years. Like I have multiple different Hans Zimmer playlists in my Amazon Music collection. I love his music. One of the soundtracks I listen to all the time is A Last Samurai. That's like my study soundtrack when I'm working. I always have that going. But Hans Zimmer, if you're not familiar, he has composed. He is in a league all of his own, and I think he's a better composer than John Williams. Like John Williams is legendary. Cannot take anything away from John Williams. John Williams has done Star Wars, Jurassic Park, E.T. He's done a lot of classic soundtracks. I think Hans Zimmer's better. I love Hans Zimmer's music. John Williams, more traditional. Hans Zimmer uses traditional mixed with like electric sounds and whatnot. So Hans Zimmer, amazing. Okay, he's done Lion King, Gladiator, Inception, Last Samurai, Pirates of the Caribbean. I could go on and on. Interstellar. He's done so many. Okay, So we had a chance to go to Hans Zimmer live, and so I've had these tickets for months. When I found out he was touring, I immediately bought the tickets. In fact, my wife and I had the chance to go see him 10 years ago. And we did not go because we had just gotten married and we were like broke. And so I have regretted it ever since. And I would always look to see when he was touring North America again, and he never would tour. He would go on tour, but it was always in Europe. So he would go in Europe. The moment I found North America, I'm like, I'm buying, I'm going. So I got floor seats, some of the best seats in the house. Dude, sitting in the floor in United Center, I have a video of this and I'll show you, Jim. But like, I just turned around and just saw all of the seats all around because that place was packed. Yeah. It was packed. And so probably the greatest concert experience I've ever had in my entire life, hands down. Like just crazy. Where would you rate it? Because I know you've been to a lot of concerts, Jim. Where would you rate it?
Oh, yeah, honestly, I would say it's in my top 3 for sure. I would probably aim for my second best concert I've been to.
Okay.
And you know, it was actually funny because I pretty much have only ever been to rock concerts or metal concerts. And so I was like texting my family and I'm like, hey, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do here. Do I like stand up and like headbang or like I just don't really know. And Dan's like, well, there might be some songs that you do that for, you know,
which there was a lot where I'm literally down there just I'm going. It was. So what was your overall thought of the entire concert, Jim?
Oh man, it was, if I could sum it in one word, It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was your favorite piece? What was your favorite piece?
Oh, dude, Gladiator was so good.
Okay, it was phenomenal. Okay, and real quick tidbit here. If you've ever seen the movie Gladiator, if you ever listened to the music, it's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite soundtracks. But the voice in Gladiator, there's a lady who sings a lot of. If you've listened to the music, you probably know who I'm talking about. Like you'd be able to pick out the voice that I'm specifically talking about. But she sings like one of the first songs that come on when the movie starts, when Maximus is walking through the wheat, puts his hand over it, and then also her voice is featured prominently throughout the movie. Okay,
I believe it's the first and the last song, correct?
And other songs as well throughout the film.
Yeah,
but yes, but it is definitely first and last. But also other ones. Her name is Lisa Gerard. Okay, she's that voice. When Hans Zimmer went on tour in Europe 10 years ago, she did not tour. There was somebody else who did it. And I don't think she normally tours with him. I think it's normally like somebody else who sings. And they still do a phenomenal job. But like it's literally Lisa, like she's the girl. Like she's the voice. And so the fact that she was there when he starts introducing her, he went on and was like, this is my friend, my good friend over many, many years, and saying all these things. And I'm like, is that actually Lisa Gerard? And then he said Lisa Gerard. I'm like, oh my, no stinking way. It's actually her. It's crazy. Like that was, for me, it was a treat. It was an absolute treat because I've listened to that soundtrack God knows how many times. Hands down, my favorite part of that the entire concert, at the end, they finished with Time from Inception. Good. You know what song it is. So at the end of Time is Hans Zimmer playing the piano, single notes. Okay. One of the greatest that moment in the movie. It's at the end of the movie when Leonardo DiCaprio spins the top and then walks out to see his kids, and then it cuts to black, and you don't know if the top is going. It's basically, you don't know if he's in a dream or not. Okay. So that point, it's him playing the piano, single notes, and then it ends with a violin. Okay. There was a good 30 seconds where you could hear a pin drop in the entire stadium. One of the craziest concert experiences I've ever had in my entire life. I'm sitting there next to my wife. I'm like, I was blown away. The audience did phenomenal. Like we just sat there in absolute awe, because like that's, I think for so many people, that song is why they love Hans Zimmer. It blew my mind. Okay. And then my second favorite part of the entire night was Lion King. So Hans Zimmer composed Lion King. And so if you know Lion King, there's the song, the movie opens, Ma Savannah. His name is Lebo M, and he was there performing as well. The fact, like, I'm sitting there listening to the guy who wrote that music and the guy who sang that. It was
the original singer for Gladiator.
Dude, it was amazing. Wow. And so where you were sitting, hopefully you saw it, but during the Lion King, they showed videos of the original recording of Hans Zimmer and then everybody recording the music. Like it was just, it transports you back to when you first saw the movie. And then when they finished that song of You See Pride Rock, and they're all singing like, until we find our place. It was like the chills were everywhere. I mean, dude, it was absolutely amazing. But I think Jim summed it up best. Magical, like magical, beautiful. It was so amazing. My wife was like, she's already looking to see, like, man, he's not anywhere near us again. I want to go see it again. I'm like, I know, right? 100%. So anyway, we had to talk about Hans Zimmer on right here because It was amazing, absolutely amazing. So, all right, well, that's it, guys. So this is the it. This is the Hobbies and Happiest podcast, Disney Lorcana podcast, where we didn't talk about Disney Lorcana here at the end for for reasons, but yeah, but. All of that being said, all right, to you guys, I want to know if you are watching, if you're listening, leave us a comment. What are your thoughts? What do you think about the Hobbies and Happiest podcast, the Disney Lorcana podcast coming back? What do you think about it? If you're a fan, let us know, man. Let us know some of the things that you want to see from us or hear us talk about on this podcast. I'm excited. I mean, I went through so much of this, just telling you guys how excited we are to just sit and talk about Disney Lorcana. Hopefully, we can provide a lot of value for the Lorcana community. And again, I really hope to see multiplayer formats for this game continue to grow and continue to evolve over time. So again, if you guys are watching us over on YouTube, don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and turn on bell notifications so you can be notified when we release more Disney Lorcana content in the future. So now with weekly podcasts, you're going to be getting at least 2 pieces of content from us every week. You got Multiplayer Madness on Fridays, and then this podcast will probably be going up on Wednesdays. I haven't decided yet, but yeah, you're going to be seeing more content from us. So with that being said, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. Jim, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Always enjoy talking about card games, specifically Lorcana, with you, buddy. This is fun, man.
We're back.
Dude, it's what? Come with me if you want to live. Come with me if you want to listen to Disney Lorcana. That was terrible, dude. Dan, just stop.
let's set it that. No, we're leaving that.
We're leaving that. So, all right, guys. Well, with that being said, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today, and we will catch you on next week's episode of the podcast, and we'll see you real soon.